So I appreciate that conversation in part because it is related to what we're about to talk about, in the sense of what do, having lots of conversations with the chancellors, with the officers, what is the role of the system, and how do we ensure that we move the entire University of Hawaii forward. And one of the, we've had retreats, we've had lots of conversations, and what we've done is starting to create our 18-month action plans that have specific items and deliverables that will be accomplished and we will hold ourselves accountable for. And one of those things that is it's under the strategic plan, but really it is part of every component of the strategic plan is this system-wide approach to AI. So what I'd like to do is walk you through this. I won't go into a great deal of detail. I'll let you ask whatever questions you want. But this is also part of a new strategy that I've requested the chair to have a session at every board meeting that talks about what we're doing proactively so that you can see the strategy in real time and development and chime in as we're moving forward rather than always reactively assessing how we did on something. So hopefully this is the beginning of something you find very useful. So many of you know I've been talking about this a lot, and this is familiar for some and not others, but artificial intelligence, and by that, I'm really talking about generative AI and large language learning models. The technology that's come to the forefront in the last 3 years or so. Our AI has been around a lot longer than that. But the best way it's been described to me is really that it's like the invention of electricity. It doesn't touch a particular area, it touches all areas and will really reform how we go about doing the work of just about everything. Not just in the university, but outside. Now, I know that some of you are skeptics. You've told me so. And I just want to show this particular quote because I think it's particularly relevant, that in general, these type of changes, we tend to overestimate the impact in the short term, but underestimate the significance of the impact in the long term. And I think for this particular change, most of the experts in this space are comparing this as a more impactful change than the Industrial Revolution. So, this is one of the big changes of our society, and the university should be a leader in moving us through it. To give you just a little bit of sense of statistics here, I mean, these numbers are changing by the day, but every single source really is identifying multiple disruptions in the workforce. 300 million jobs will change. 80% of the workforce will have at least 10%, and I think that's an underestimate of their work impacted by these changes. But everywhere you look, there are changes and debates about the impact. For those of you who can see the slide, I know it's in your book. I really want to just highlight every single industry just about is impacted by this, including some of our technical and career education work that we're doing, things like agriculture and where, even plumbing and different areas are being impacted by this. So it's not just about computer science. That's what I want to stress today. And I won't go through this slide, but I do want to put it up. This is from our friends at Microsoft that basically identifies the 360 view of how artificial intelligence will impact education. From a more simplistic perspective, I think about it in this way, that it changes what we teach. It's going to change how we teach. It is changing. I should say all of these things are actually here. This isn't something that's going to happen in the future, just the impact will scale. Our scholarly endeavors as researchers, our role as the largest employer in the state of Hawaii, and also the role and value of higher education in society. And I'll just take you through these pretty briefly and then talk about what we're doing. So in terms of what we're teaching, the knowledge duplication rate is exponentially skyrocketing. And the amount of knowledge that we have to master and process is simply undoable without these additional tools. And so if you think of the academy as the place where experts coalesce to solve the problems of the future, increasingly those solutions and that data is outside of the academy. So it really changes the narrative of what we're doing. In terms of how we teach, I don't think you could have a bigger revolution coming. Everything from virtualized teaching assistant, where you have a 24/7 essentially thing, a bot that is there to help you learn specific tailored content that knows what you know, what you don't know, and can create progress on a scale heretofore unseen, is already occurring. And for example, at Georgia Tech, they had a teaching assistant that they didn't know was a bot, but they thought was a person named Jill Watson. And in several of these studies, the fascinating part is in some cases, the students and patients in healthcare actually prefer the bot because the bot is patient. The bot does not mind answering your questions 100 times. The bot does not tell you that your question is not a good one. And so there's lots of work being done here. There's also incredible and kind of scary things that are happening about even tracking eyesight on virtual online engagement to see whether the intention has been lost by the audience and by the body language being picked up by the cameras, things of that nature. So it is truly in all respects quite remarkable. In research and scholarly endeavors, of course, it's not only the ability to take enormously complex data sets and move them forward in record time with these assistants, but also in terms of writing articles and solving highly complex problems. So lots of ethics issues that will be popping up here that we'll be dealing with. And finally, I'll just say the role, this is something I think about a lot that I think we talk less about, and that's the role of higher education at all. If expertise becomes common and in the hand, available at your fingertips, what does that mean for higher education as a conclave of expertise? And to me, this is actually an enormously exciting moment for higher education as we reimagine what is the value that we produce. And especially as you saw those statistics that Brian just showed you about the decline of 18-year-olds, for example. Well, we may have a lot less traditional learners, but what we have opened is an area where every single person, every single industry will need to learn how to use this, and probably not just once, right? It will be skilling and reskilling across the lifespan as jobs that we have not yet identified into existence become the norm. And the university is primed and perhaps the only institution in the state of Hawaii that can play that role to lead through that type of societal transformation. So, our job is to lead through this moment, and we're excited to do that. So to give you an idea of a few things that are on the horizon, and we can easily share with you some more detailed plans in the days ahead, but we have just hired our first Chief Academic Technology Innovation Officer, a person who will fondly be referred to as the AI czar, who is a deep expert in this space and will help coordinate across the 10 campuses a thoughtful approach to scaling artificial intelligence in all of these areas, right? A good place where each of our campuses in isolation is doing exciting, important work, but nothing compared to what we can do by combining our efforts together to reach at scale and deliver to the state and the workforce needs for the future by banding together in a consortial way. So very, very excited about that. We're building infrastructure. We're evaluating new technology that obviously is necessary in computing capacity. We are doing intensive training across classifications and curricular development and community engagement. So let me just show you a few pieces of this. So we recently launched our AI planning group. It is the overarching group that will help us have a very deliberate, very intentional, very transformative, we hope, plan for the next 18 months. This is one where we're going to come back to you all the time because nothing is perfect, because it's evolving so incredibly quickly. And so we're getting expertise cross-campus, cross-functional in the same room. And we have 3 or 4, I think, additional committees that we'll be putting together. Heavy emphasis on workforce development and meeting the needs of Hawaii as we move forward. Heavy emphasis on ethics and humanities. What's that governance role that we need to play as this deploys? And also conversations about where does Native Hawaiian curriculum and values and customs come into play as we move forward in this space. And I'll just add here, it's actually a wonderful time to be the University of Hawaii, because as we lose some of the groundedness, as we go into increasingly technical spaces, as Governor Abercrombie raised his iPhone earlier. This will be that on steroids. You know, the INA-based education that we do and grounding in cultural values can actually provide an entirely new role that we've conceived of before. So very, very exciting in that space. In terms of infrastructure, you know, I like to say if we don't do this right, we will have created the biggest divide in equity ever known based on technology. It's already an issue for the internet and accessibility. It will be amplified tremendously. So we are working not just for this university in this space, but really to identify what needs to happen across the state and to advocate for it. In terms of training, this is our forte. We are building right now not only internal training for our faculty, staff, and students, but also asking how do we lead the state through this transition. Last week, we presented this to the House and Senate higher education committees, as well as the Finance Committee, our members, a few members of that, and really talking about how do we work together with the university and the lead to move the workforce and the equities forward here. And there's all kinds of training taking place, so stay tuned for that. I will also mention, I think I mentioned to this group before, but important to say, my team has had 2 retreats on this already in terms of training, because we cannot lead this revolution if we don't understand what this revolution is. And I would invite the regents, if you're interested in joining us in some of those. I think it's important for you as we move through this also to understand what does this mean and what is, frankly, the jaw-dropping power that is being put in front of us with the touch of some of these buttons. If you don't actually work through it, you don't understand how really it is both frightening and exhilarating at the same time in terms of what is possible. We are moving quickly as we can to infuse this throughout our curriculum. We have incentivized the infusion this summer of faculty to put it in their classrooms. We had a very large turnout. I think we had 50 selected for $1,000 to get it in their class starting this fall, with curricular areas, everything from philosophy, English, math, psychology, economics, business. So again, this is across the entire spectrum. We had some working with our computer with Vice President Garrett. I always forget his last name. Sorry, Garrett. It's because you're so friendly. I call you Garrett. That's why. But he also has a group that he's leading this through. So lots of activity going there. We also have a group of faculty who have done what they're calling a Menahune group, where they're reimagining university education using AI as a pedagogical partner. So lots of grassroots engagement. I think some of you are aware we put together, a group of faculty put together the Aloha Intelligence Institute proposal to the legislature. That was not funded, but we are recircling how to engage with those folks throughout this new initiative. So lots to do there. And I'm just thrilled to tell you that coming this fall will be our first exclusive offerings in this space. A graduate certificate in applied computing and AI data science will be offered, and a professional master's in computer science with an AI data science track. I don't think we've talked much about the gap analysis. We just completed that. That was one of the first things I commissioned when I started as president, to ask the question, how are we serving the state through our curriculum in a guided way? Another system level question, right? You can have great programs on an individual campus, but are they connected so that our students have access no matter where they sit, whatever level of educational attainment they're looking for, from a certificate all the way through a PhD? And what we've identified through the gap analysis are areas that would benefit from AI, and our intention is to then go and incentivize that development from the top down versus what is a traditional curricular development path that sometimes can take 3 to 4 years. So really thinking through how do we move this through to meet the demands of the moment. And then finally, there's been lots of conversations about workforce need and development, but talking about how to connect those together. That's another area where we've had really good work in lots of places across the system and across the campuses, but no consolidated ownership of it. So we're looking to really elevate that to the next level, talk to industry. We've got lots of partnerships, lots of opportunities to bring in philanthropy, but also industry engagement. And for those of you who know Guy Kawasaki, for example, he's our new, we're calling an AI evangelist in residence. And he's also on the UH Foundation board, and he'll be working with us closely this fall to really help get people excited and light a fire in this space for our non-believers, some of whom may be sitting at these desks. We'll see with the questions. And so that was a really fast way of moving through this. Behind those slides is a great deal of work that's very specific with dates, deadlines, accountables, and measurables that we'll be bringing to you. But I did want to flag for you that that work was being done. It is being launched, and we just are thrilled to be going to the next level of work that's already started. So I'm happy to take your questions of what that looks like.
Any questions?
I'm wondering who is using AI at this time. Excellent, excellent job. We'll definitely be coming to you for some additional training if you're interested.
Right. It's good to hear about the graduate certificate. And yeah.
Yeah, we have such talented faculty, and it's really, to the point of the budgeting conversation we were having again, we have to structure our budgets to incentivize development in areas that are not even here, but are 5-10 years out that we're anticipating. And this was one where came in, saw that this was happening, was able to target and direct the development so that we could speed the offering to the fall. It was originally slated for next year to launch in fall 26. So these things can be done. We just have to be very intentional about them.